a wonderful soup lunch again. I wanted to let you know that the proceeds from our lunch today will actually benefit the Rotary Foundation, and that's the theme of our meeting today. So if you could all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll get our meeting rolling. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the guests, I want to let you know that one of the things that we do at every meeting is to recite our four-way test, which reminds us of the ethical standards we have in our business and in our lives. Please join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? At this time, I'd like to invite our inspirational speaker, Carter Sales, Business Development Manager at Telecom Technicians Incorporated. Carter?
Thanks, President Jim. Good morning, everyone. I had something else prepared today, but Henry Strauss and I were driving downtown, and I was telling about a story that I read about in a Rotary publication that was for 100 Rotary International presidents throughout the year. And basically what the story is Westinghouse did an experiment. And what they did is they took a piece of a steel girder that was high tensile strength steel, hung it from a chain vertically. And then they took a cork that was about an ordinary cork out of a bottle, maybe about a half an ounce in weight, and they suspended that from a thread. And they continually took the cork and they hit it against this steel girder on a regular basis. As this happened, nothing happened in the steel girder for about 10 minutes. After about 10 minutes, there was a vibration that occurred. And after about 12 minutes, the girder started to move. 25 minutes time, that girder was moving like a pendulum on a clock, just by the force and consistency of the half-ounce cork. And I wanted to tell this story today because I think it really relates well to what we do in Rotary and the Rotary Foundation, every Rotarian every year. If we think of ourselves as not having any impact, think of that cork against that 1,000-pound steel girder can move it. It's consistency, and it's doing it every year. That's what I'd like to leave you with today. So please enjoy your soup, your fellowship, and our great program that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, President Jim, and happy Thursday, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and start by welcoming our guests and visiting Rotarians. First of all, I'd like to welcome Curtis Grice, who is a prospective new member and a guest of Jim White. And if everyone could go ahead and stand up so we can recognize you when I call your name. So, Curtis, great to have you. Thank you. We also have with us Paul Jones, who's a prospective new member with Peg Johnston. Paul, welcome. Lynn Dawson is a guest also of Peg Johnston. Lynn, there you go. Hi. And let's see, Chris Rose was a guest of Mark Donovan, but I don't believe Chris made it. Is that correct? Okay. And then we also have Jenny Stith, who is a guest of Grant Wilkins. Jenny, welcome. She's right back there in the back. Glad to have you. And then we have a number of visiting Rotarians. From the district level, we have Peter Hewing, our district governor. Peter. And his wife, Mary Jean Hewing. Welcome. And then, of course, our speaker, Greg Pod, as he was taking a drink of water. Nice to have you, Greg. And then Terry Volger. Terry, visiting from the Lodo Club, I believe. Is Terry here? No. Okay. All right. And then we have on to our announcements for this week. The reservation deadline for our fellowship meetings next week is tomorrow. Lots of fun and exciting options are available, including a couple of evening cocktail parties. Please note that several are held on days other than Thursday, so don't assume that it's a Thursday. Make sure that you look at that date. See Lauren after the meeting today if you'd like to sign up. Our Rotary Family Holiday Luncheon is going to be on December 18th. This is a party. No official Rotary business will be conducted as in the past. Chair Doug McLemore has been working hard to amp up the festivities this year, including, oh really, I didn't know this, ballet dancers and musical entertainment. Of course, if Doug's involved, there's musical entertainment, right, Doug? And, of course, Santa White will be making an appearance. Reservations are required by Friday the 11th. Be sure to bring your significant other, kids and grandkids. There will be something for everyone. Lastly, Rotarians are asked to bring donated unwrapped books for our Denver Kids students. And now on to our mission moment for the week. Since Greg is going to be speaking today about Rotary, what Rotary is accomplishing throughout the world on a large scale, I thought it fitting that I focus on a specific international project our club supports. So I'd like to just say a few words about the Burkina Faso water wells. In the 2013-14 year, Club 31 contributed $10,678, which leveraged an additional $89,322 in Rotary funds. The objective of this grant was to increase access to clean water by providing deep bore wells in 2 rural villages, recondition 20 existing wells that were either too shallow or contaminated, and build 4 community latrines in those villages to improve sanitation. Overall, to create awareness of safe hygiene practices in those communities and their schools. I'm thrilled to share that not only was all of that accomplished, but they, in addition, ended up reconditioning 30 existing wells, so 10 more than was originally set out in the goals. So that is terrific. We got a great return on investment in that. And these water projects impacted the lives of 32,000 individuals. And I don't know, reading about these grants, I realized I take latrines for granted, I think, and I shouldn't do that. So that's just terrific work that's going on around the world because of our club. So thank you to all of you for contributing to our club's foundation and making that happen. With that, I'd like to, and if you'd like more information about getting involved with that project or other international projects that our club is working on, you can see Rotarian Mary Penny for that. With that, I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, Kristi. And at this time, I'm calling on Alice Bulwinkle, our Denver Rotary Club Foundation, to convene our annual meeting of the foundation.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome, everybody. It's my pleasure to call to order the Denver Rotary Club Foundation annual meeting. I want to make a few comments before we talk about our nominees and elect our new board. I thought it might be helpful to review what our foundation board members are called on to do. So, first of all, what the foundation does is we get the money that Rotary raises and that individual members give every year. I really want to call out Charlie Miller for the great job that he did with re-energizing our Branch Rickey event this year. Charlie, thank you so much. And I want to thank Kyle Henderson for his leadership in the peach sale. Kyle, thank you. And finally, I want to thank each of you who is a member of the foundation for your contributions. I have a little description here of what it takes to be a member. The foundation has only one class of members. Any current active member of Rotary Club of Denver who has contributed $1,000 or has made the commitment of $100 a year to reach $1,000 is a member of our foundation. So out of that group, the President Jim and I selected a nominating committee, and I want to thank Chuck Everill for chairing that committee. And we have now 4 nominees to put before you this morning. I guess it's afternoon. Carter, you had the morning. I've got the afternoon here. Harriet Downer is the first. Jack Green, Bob Heiserman, and Michael Dent. Would you all stand so that the members can see you? Well, they're seeing you here, but they need to see that you're all here. Thank you. We do want to thank the members whose terms are ending this year. They are Lucius Ashby, a past president of the foundation, Todd Bacon, another past president of the foundation, Sid Brooks, who led, among other things, besides chairing the grants committee, led the flood relief program, which was a huge, huge job. Thank you, Sid. And finally, myself. So let's see. I guess we're ready for a motion to vote for the proposed slate of officers. Chuck? Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. We have elected 4 new members to the foundation board. I think we have a lot to look forward to with the diversity of their backgrounds and the intelligence that they will bring to the club. I need to ask you if there's any new business for this meeting. Okay. Is there any old business that you wish to bring before this meeting? Okay. I think that we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. It's a pleasure serving with you in concert this year. Amen. And now I'd like to convene the annual meeting of our club, and we will start, of course, just as Alice did with the election of board directors. First of all, I want to mention that this board has been very key this year in helping us move forward with a new strategic plan. And it was a pleasure to be working with Allison before I took the presidency to begin that process. And the outgoing board members have been very instrumental in that. Those include Pam Adams, Wynn Candera, Michael Connell, and Kristi Shaffer. Thank you all for serving through the end of this year, and Kristi will continue in her role as president-elect starting next year. We convened a group to nominate potential members of the new board, and I want to thank Michael Dent, Scott White, Jack Green, Steve Mast, and Don Schloop for serving on that board nominating committee. And the slate of directors you can see on the slide right to my left here, and they include Deborah Demuth, Vice President and CFO, Colorado Trust. Deborah, could you please stand and remain standing? Thank you. Warren Donder, President of Case Benefits of Colorado. Thank you, Warren. Mary Penny, CFO of the Quiet Companies. Mary, are you here? Not here today? Okay. And Chris Peters, Financial Advisor for Robert Baird and Company. Is Chris here? There he is. So this is our slate of new directors this year. I am really excited about them following up with this strategic plan. There's a lot of really good challenges, as you saw in our presentation just a couple of weeks ago. And I would like to ask for a motion to accept this slate of new directors. Jim, thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Thanks, Don. All those in favor of this slate of directors, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much. Warren, Deb, Chris, thank you very much for your willingness to serve on this board. There are no additional nominations. I should have asked for that at the beginning, but we didn't receive those ahead of time. I'd now like to ask whether there is any new business to come before us for this annual meeting. If not, okay. Any old business that we should continue? All right, thank you. I'll ask for an adjournment of this particular annual meeting. So moved. Thank you. All right, now, thank you for that bit of business. It really is important, and as I said, it's really been a pleasure and continues to be a pleasure working with Alice and with the Rotary Foundation. And now we have a special presentation in recognition of Paul Harris Fellow contributors. Don Lewis, Rotary Foundation Support Chair, will lead us in that section of the meeting. Don?
Thank you, President Jim. As part of our Rotary Foundation Day, I'm pleased to recognize our fellow Denver Rotarians in their giving journey to the Rotary Foundation. First are those who have reached major milestones in their Paul Harris Fellow giving. That includes both cash donations and recognition points. Recipients, as I read your name, would you please come forward to the table on my right, pick up your pen, and be greeted by the District Governor, Peter Ewing. Peter, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
And then, if fellow Rotarians, if you could hold your applause until we're completely finished with the recognition, we'll live within our time limit. So thank you. First, Paul Harris Fellow plus 8. Jim Johnston, would you please come forward? Jim is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Paul Harris Fellow plus 7. Sue Davis, are you here today? Chuck Everill. Bob Heiserman. Bob, I saw you earlier. Come on up. Bob is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. And Jean Herman, if you're here today, please come forward. Jean is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Paul Harris Fellow plus 6. Don Lewis. Don is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. And Jim Marlowe. Paul Harris Fellow plus 5. Gary Lawrence and Ved Nanda. Please come forward. Paul Harris Fellow plus 4. Debbie DeMuth. Paul Harris Fellow plus 3. Rich Harris and Hank Strauss. Hank is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Paul Harris Fellow plus 2. Mark Bolding, Allison Clark Hardesty, Lee Everding, Alan Friedberg, Bill Houston, Bill Korstadt, Bob Moorhead. Bob is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Mike O'Connell, Giles Paulson. Giles is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. And Jeff Pryor. Paul Harris Fellow plus 1. Mitch Benedict. Rob Clinton. Mark Donovan. Mark is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Carol Duncan. Carol is also a member of the Paul Harris Society. Larry Gloss, Jim Goddard, and John Stewart. And we have new Paul Harris Fellows. Wonderful news. New Paul Harris Fellows being recognized today are Paul Andrews, Sandeep Kapoor, Melinda Quiet, and Scott White. Now, this group, when you include the recognition points, represents $128,000 in contributions to the Rotary Foundation. And fellow Rotarians, thank you so much for this. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to mention another group while we're at it. Sustaining members. Sustaining members, 77 fellow Rotarians so far this year have become sustaining members of the Rotary Foundation. That's good news. And finally, we have 160 members that are a member of the Every Rotarian Every Year group. Those folks also deserve applause. Would you folks mind coming back after the meeting for a group picture? Thank you. You're free to go. Huh? Oh, you're welcome. Okay. All right. One final thing that I want to do. I ran upon a wonderful 1.5 minute thank you from the Rotary Foundation. And I think it expresses a lot of what we're all about. So please direct your attention to the screen and take in this Rotary Foundation video.
Thank you, Don, for that presentation. And thank you for all the support of the Rotary Foundation. This club has a lot to be proud of. And now I'd like to invite our guest speaker, and Grant Wilkins, who will be presenting or introducing our guest speaker. Grant, as you may know, is a Rotary International past director, a past district governor, and past club president. Grant is wonderful to serve with. He was very instrumental in getting me fully engaged in Rotary here, and this is going to be a very special presentation. Grant, thank you.
Thank you very much, President Jim. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce our speaker today, but let me really impress you before I do that. You're going to be impressed with what he has to say. But you just saw all the awards that our club members have been so generous in contributing to the Rotary Foundation. But many of you are not familiar enough with the foundation to realize that we have some real high levels of giving. One is called the Arch Clump Society, and that's the founding group of Rotarians way back in 1905 that formed our great organization. To be a member of the Arch Clump Society, you have to give $250,000 $250,000 to be a member. And our speaker today and his wife are both members of the Arts Club Society. Let's give him a hand. Greg Pod, who I've known for quite a few years now, was a district governor in Arizona. There was 3 districts in Arizona, and he had 40-some clubs in his district, and he personally visited each one of them many times during the year, just as our governor and his wife are visiting our club today for different occasions and what have you. He had to make 42 official visits and then went back many other times voluntarily. What I'm pointing out, he was that dedicated of a Rotarian, even though he was an active practicing CPA at the time. He's the best prepared to come in as an RI director of anybody I've had the pleasure of knowing the 30-some years I've been active in Rotary International. I joined this club 45 years ago, but just the last 30 years have I been active on a world basis. And Greg actually is going to be probably the best and most effective RI director I've ever known. And because of that, I predict in the next 10 years he will be our world president. And I'm not politicking at all. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He joined Rotary in May of 1982. Is now a member of our Evergreen, Colorado Rotary Club and serving as our International Director 2014 to 2016. His resume is a mile high, appropriate for our mile high city, and includes leading a group study exchange to the Philippines, serving as Rotary International President for many district conferences as the President's personal representative, served on the International Council of Legislation, has been honored with the Service Above Self Award and the Rotary Foundation Citation for Meritorious Service. As I mentioned, he's a CPA in his day job. Previously to that, he owned and operated a metal fabrication firm and an international healthcare software development company. He and his wife Pam have been married for 38 years, have 3 children, 3 grandchildren. All are Paul Harris Fellows. What Greg will be doing this year and next Rotary years is he will be traveling the world. And by the way, many of you have never seen this book. This is Rotary International's official directory, which they used to print every year, and now they put it on a disc. But some of us old-timers, like myself, still request this printed copy. It lists the place of meeting the president, the year the club was formed, the time that the club meets of 33,000 clubs in our world, and has pictures of our current board. And Greg's board is 20 people representing 13 different countries. And he will travel 65% of the time this year and next on official Rotary business. The only pay is what he feels in his heart, because it's one of the most interesting, challenging, and rewarding jobs in the world to do what he is going to be doing the next 2 years. So without further ado, let me introduce current RI Director, Greg Pod.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. What a great honor it is to be here today. I do want to let you know that today is our granddaughter's 2nd birthday. And I had breakfast with her this morning, and she reminded me that she hates Rotary. She said, "Papa, I really hate Rotary." And I said, "Why?" And she says, "Because when you do Rotary, you can't play with me." So anyway, after I return from here, we'll be celebrating that birthday. But I do want to also thank you very much for the soup today. As I travel around the world, I've learned that the only individual that has perfect attendance at a Rotary meeting is chicken. So I appreciate that very, very much. So it's a great honor to be here. Grant and Maureen, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Peter and Mary Jean, it's so great to see you. as we're passing in the night all the time, but we seem to catch up with each other every once in a while. So what I would like to do is, based upon some conversations that I've had with individuals in your club, I put together an agenda that's pretty simple, to be honest with you. And one of the things that I would like to do is talk about our Rotary Foundation and what a great honor it was to see all of the individuals getting their awards today for their Paul Harris and specifically their Paul Harris Society. But what I'd like to do is tell you one of the many best kept secrets that we have in our Rotary Foundation. The other thing that I would like to do is talk about Rotary International in North America, our largest challenge. And it's a very, very large challenge. And then what I would like to do is open it up for open questions. All questions are open. If I can answer them, I certainly will. If I can't answer them, I will certainly get back to you and give you an answer that you would like to know. Okay? So let's start off with one of the things that I would like to, that I'm very, very proud of, and that's our Rotary Foundation. If you think about it, what it really does is it transforms gifts into projects that changes the lives of people all over the world. As I travel, and especially Grant mentioned that I was a group study exchange leader to the Philippines, I was completely overwhelmed when I saw what Rotary was doing in third world countries. And quite frankly, Rotary would never be able to exist without Rotary, of all the things that they do. I think one of the greatest gifts that I have ever received in Rotary was when I was a group study exchange leader, and I had brought 1,000 toys with me to the Philippines. In the Rotary Club there, we had made 46 Rotary presentations in 30 days, so you can imagine how much fun that was. And what was really interesting, we went out to a little community, and this little community did not have any school, did not have any water, no sanitation, no clothes for the children, no shoes for the children, and certainly no schooling for the children. And as I was surrounded by about 30 of the children and I had handed out my toys, a little 8-year-old girl came up to me and she grabbed my hand and she put it on her forehead and she put it back down. And my Rotarian aide that was with me at the time, I looked over because I didn't understand what this little girl was trying to tell me. And he had tears running down his eyes. And I said, I don't understand what this little girl is trying to tell me. And the man looked at me, the Rotarian looked at me and said, that little girl gave you the only gift she could ever give you. She blessed you. And then all the other 39 children blessed me. And those are the gifts of Rotary that come through our Rotary Foundation. So it means a great deal to me. One of the things that I want to bring out to you, and nothing is worse than having a CPA as a director of Rotary International. In fact, every time that we have any kind of vote at the board meeting in regard to finances, they always look to me to see how I'm going to vote. And I said, that's a lot of pressure. But what I'd like for you to do is understand some things that most Rotarians never know about our Rotary Foundation. And I think by the time that I go over a couple of slides with you, I think you're going to get a true appreciation of what our Rotary Foundation is and what it does, how it's managed, and those kinds of items. Our particular, how much are we investing right now? Well, it's a little over $1 billion. $462 million are sitting in the annual programs fund. The endowment fund, which we used to call the permanent fund, now has around $314 million in it. And when you add them all together, plus Rotary International is about $108 million of which we invest, we've got about a $1.5 billion under investment. Nice little chunk of change. When I was serving on the investment committee, which was a great honor, it was always interesting when we would make allocations and make changes of $100 million here or $240 million here. And I learned very quickly that you got to drop zeros. You just can't make those kind of changes without understanding the numbers that are involved in here. You know, the other thing that I think is interesting is how our particular Rotary Foundation is managed. And I can't tell you, I had no appreciation of this until I got involved with the investment committee. But obviously we have a board of trustees that oversee the Rotary Foundation that you and I invest in. But more important than that is we have a volunteer organization called the investment committee. There are 15 people that serve on that committee. And I can tell you very clearly that it is probably one of the finest committees that I have ever served on in any board of any organization that I have ever been a part of. The qualifications of the individuals that sit on that board is absolutely mind-boggling. And to give you a good example, one of the individuals that sits on my right is an individual that handles a great deal of the investments for the Rockefeller family. The individual that sits on my left is a young lady named Laurel Templeton. And yes, she is the granddaughter of Sir Templeton of the Templeton Funds. And I cannot tell you the amount of knowledge that is sitting in that room. And when organizations like PIMCO, which is a very large organization, comes in and gives a report, they better be careful of what they say, because there are people in that room that know a lot more than they do. So it's an honor to be a part of that. Also, we have a staff, as you can imagine, that helps us in regard to our investment, that are overlooking the investments. We also have investment consulting firm, NEPC. They are simply outstanding. They're constantly giving us guidance on how our allocations are going to be, how we should maneuver, what's going on in our marketplace. The amount of information that comes across that table at Investment Committee is truly, truly amazing. We also have investment managers. We have around 27 investment managers. If I named them, you would know all of them. They're extremely highly respected investment managers throughout the world. And they really like being a part of Rotary. They know our mission, and they certainly want to be a part of what we are doing. And then on top of that, we've got the custodian bank. So you can see with Mellon Bank that we are very, very well managed. And we have a lot of people that are constantly, every day, looking at those investments, making sure that they are properly being handled for your benefit and my benefit. So I'm very proud of that particular item. One of the things that you may be able to not see all of this, but the annual fund, like I said, is around $395 million, is extremely well diversified. We've got 25 different managers that are taking those funds, putting those all aside. And one of the things that happened last year, if you recall a couple of years ago, the Rotary Foundation had to cut back on the number of grants that they were giving out. Why? Because our investment returns were not very well. And so one of the things that was recommended by the investment committee was to form an operating reserve account so that we never, ever, ever let this happen. And our goal was to basically put aside 1 year of distribution of grants throughout the world. That particular amount of money was $67 million. And I am very, very proud to tell you, with the investment returns, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, that particular investment operating reserve was funded in 1 year. So you can imagine the kind of return that we got last year. But you can see it's done on a very conservative basis. And again, one of the things that is asked a lot of me is, why in the world are we in hedge funds? Well, I can tell you our investment advisors would like us to be more in hedge funds, but you can imagine the conservative nature of Rotary and the individuals that, like myself, that serve on that committee. We're a little leery to go in those particular areas, but they've done very, very well for us. So again, very, very nicely done. The other area that I'd like to share is our permanent fund, or our endowment fund. You can see again that it's a well-balanced portfolio. We have all the sectors out there. There are 28 managers that we use for this particular management of this fund. And something that I think that I'm very, very proud of is our investment performance. Last year, I can tell you that our annual fund earned 16.1%. And that's a pretty good return for a nonprofit organization. The endowment fund earned even better. They earned a 16.8% return. And I guess one of the things that we try to do is consistency of investments. And if you look over a 25-year period, the annual programs fund has earned us 7.5%, and 7.6% on the endowment fund. So again, I think we all should be very, very proud of how our monies are being utilized, how they're being invested, how they're being the transparency that we have in regard to our particular item. And one of the things that was put on there was the global stocks. We have gotten more and more into global stocks, as you can imagine, and quite frankly, they gave us a 20.2% return last year. So again, I'm very proud of these investment results. We've done a very, very good job, and again, we've got some really good people that are managing those funds. The other thing that I'm very, very proud of, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that Rotary International has been awarded by the Charity Navigator a 4-star rating. And a lot of people don't realize, but that is the highest rating ever given by the most prestigious independent evaluator of nonprofit organizations. Rotary International this past year, it's been the 7th year that we have got this award. And so the Rotary Foundation is in the top 3% of foundations in the United States. We all should be very, very proud of those kinds of results because obviously we're in a very, very select group of people. The other thing that I'd like to share with you is how our annual funds contribution, and I'm not going to go through all the detail. You'll really hope you didn't have a CPA as a director. But what I would like to tell you is that at the present time, all of the annual contributions come in. The contributions that we saw made here, they're invested for a 3-year period. All of those investment earnings go and pay our operating expenses. So what that means for all of you is that all of the money that you put into the Rotary Foundation gets used for our programs. So it goes directly to the fields. That's interesting. The other thing that I'd like to point out is at the present time, there's over $2 million of unused district designated funds that are sitting out for you and me to do projects. So I would encourage you that if you've got a project, make sure that you tap into these particular resources. It's your money, it's my money, that's what it's supposed to be used for. And again, projects can be done locally, they can be done internationally. So I would encourage you to do that. The next thing that I'd like to talk about, and I do want to allow enough time for open questions, but the next thing I'd like to talk about is the real critical issue that we have in Rotary in North America. As many of you know, that Rotary International has its membership chart look like this in just a second. Oh, I want to point out one more thing. And this is kind of sad to me, do you realize that only 29% of all the Rotarians in the world contribute to our Rotary Foundation? So what I saw today was very, very special to see the individuals in this club that invest in our Rotary Foundation. The other thing that I think is also interesting is only 54,000 Rotarians are giving at the Paul Harris level. Again, not a very large number for an organization like this. Those of you that are Paul Harris Society, you're at a very, very special level in Rotary International. You're in the less than 2-3% that give at that level, but you provide over 53% of all the annual contributions to our annual fund. So you should be very proud of that. The next slide is in regard to the membership. And this is our largest challenge, not only that we have in North America, but that we have throughout Rotary. Our number one project, obviously, is polio, and we will get that done. But I can tell you the most important internal project that we have for Rotary is our membership. And you're going to see this. Most organizations would be very proud of this. You can see the past 17, 18 years, we have been at the 1.2 million. Now, my wife always, if she was here, she would say only a CPA would chart out all the membership of Rotary over since 1905. But there you go. So I want to tell you what's really happening. That's really not the story. Yes, we've been very constant in our membership. But this is what's happening in regard to the membership trend. What's very sad in Rotary today is that membership in the United States is dropping. And I'm going to drill down into those numbers in just a few seconds. The other thing that's happening is that we are dropping tremendously in Asia in regard to our membership. Japan, those kind of areas. With the one exception, there's one country that is growing dramatically right now, and it's Taiwan. Does anybody know why Taiwan would be growing so rapidly? That's where our president of Rotary comes from. So they're going to make sure that that doesn't happen. We're also dropping in Australia. They're having their difficulty. But let's look at some of the positives. We're growing dramatically in Brazil. We're growing a great deal in Africa. And one of the areas that we are growing dramatically is in India. And I will just tell you that right now, India is projected to grow 60,000 net new members this year alone. I could not forget our mother country. I'm going to put them at equal. They're not. They're having their issues too. But anyway, that's what's happening. Now, what I want to do is drill down a little bit more. And this is what's going on in regard to North America. And this is why I and the board have a tremendous concern about Rotary in North America. We are basically losing around 6,300 net members per year, about almost a 15% drop in membership. Now, why is that important? As Grant indicated, the board consists of 17 different directors from all over the world. Directors are selected based upon the population of Rotary in certain parts of the world. As the United States or North America starts losing its population, we start losing our influence on the board. We start losing our ability to have directors from North America, and we start losing our individuals that represent us at the Council of Legislation that Grant also mentioned. When you start doing that, you start having a different Rotary out there because people, let's just say, I'm trying to be politically kind here, people throughout other parts of the country may not think of Rotary the way that you and I think of Rotary. So this is what's happening. And I guess I'm going to also tell you a little bit about what's happening on a zone level. And people talk about zones all the time in Rotary, and I just wanted to kind of go over that. As we indicated, there's 1.2 million Rotarians throughout the world. They serve in around 34,000 clubs throughout the world, and they are in 537 districts out the world, just like Peter and Mary Jean serve as one of those 537 district governors throughout the world. Those 537 districts are divided into 34 zones throughout the world, and that's how we organize Rotary. Directors like myself serve on a two-year term, and therefore 17 directors are basically elected from 34 zones throughout the world, and that's how it's organized. So you may want to say, well, how are we doing within our zones, our part of the United States? Is our part doing better than all the other parts? And I'm going to share that with you. This is what's happening. I don't think you have to be a CPA to understand what's going on in our membership. Our membership in North America in our two paired zones, which is the middle part of the United States, is dropping, as you can see, very rapidly. We started off on June 30th of 2003 with around 55,000 members. We've dropped to 47,000. We're 7,764 down, about a 13.96% reduction. Now, better than maybe part of the rest of the United States? Yes, but nothing we should be very proud of. So I think one of the things that I would like to share with you is what we were going to do about it. And I am very, very proud to tell you that we came together, our two paired zones, and we came together with a 108-page business plan that we put in effect about 7 months ago. And all of the district governors came together and said, enough's enough. We cannot allow this to happen to our Rotary. We simply have got to take this seriously. And we cannot continue to allow this to happen year after year after year. Because if we do, my Rotary, your Rotary are simply going to be out of business. And we are at a critical point. We've got to draw a line in the sand and say enough's enough. So those district governors came together and they put together goals that they want to be able to do. And this is what's going to happen if they can meet those goals. The 2014-15 governors, of which Peter is one of those, stepped up and said, we will increase our membership by 2,400 members, or a 5% increase. The governor-elects, Kevin O'Connell and his class, have put together a goal of 4.3% of growing that membership. And I cannot tell you, and Peter knows what I'm going to say here, I cannot tell you how proud I am of these district governor classes right now, because through October 31st of this year, our two paired zones has increased its membership by 466 members, which is extremely significant because of the fact that we haven't had an increase in membership in 10 years. And the challenge that Peter and his class have is to be able to retain those members and to keep this going, which obviously you got my letter, so you know that I'm encouraging you to do that. So anyway, so I hope I didn't bore you too much with those kind of numbers, but anyway, that's what's happening and the critical things that are happening. It's going on out there. So what I'd like to do is not take up too much of your time, but I would like to simply open it up for questions. And if there's any questions or answers that I can give you in regard to what you would like to know about Rotary or what it's like, I'd be very happy to do that. Use this? Okay. Oh, you want to take that around? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned the fall off from year to year where the membership is dropping off. What do you see as far as getting new blood, new life into the organization?
This is a great question. I wish I had the answer. I will tell you that the model that we're using for Rotary today, your Rotary, my Rotary, is a model that's been around for 109 years. And if we're going to be able to attract the younger people to come into Rotary, we're going to have to be able to fulfill their needs. Example, my daughter. My daughter loves Rotary. She understands Rotary. And I asked her to join Rotary, and she says, there's no way I would join your Rotary, Dad. I don't want to hang around people like you, which kind of hurt. But I will tell you, one of the things that I think that we're looking at, in fact, it's going to become before the council, and Dan Himmelsbach is in the back and is one of the leaders of that, is our clubs are going to have to be much more flexible. They're going to have to be able to keep their costs down. They're going to have to be flexible in regard to how they meet, how often they meet, what they do, how they do it. That's going to be attractive to the other population, the younger population. It's interesting, right now, only 19% of all Rotarians are under the age of 40. We've got to be attractive to those particular individuals. So I hope I answered your question. I think the satellite clubs that this district is doing very well is really a key. In fact, that's one of the ways that we're growing. Yes, sir, you had a question also, and I'll come back to you. Oh, where am I going? Yes, sir.
Yes, two thoughts. One is it's real clear that the bottom line on younger membership is, to me, is around the dues structure. And I think I know we've looked at that, but then we cut down our expenses, we cut down the dues. Young people will join if it's something they can afford. Very simple, but we've got to start there, get them hooked, and then they're in.
Yeah.
The second question I had is that 16% return was based on the total what? When you talked about it, 16% return?
The 16.1%, that is the return that we got last year as of June 30th for our annual programs fund.
For the whole piece, for the whole...
No, you mean the whole $1 billion?
Maybe, I'll just phrase it this way. Is there a way when you do that good that you could do a published report? And if those of us in here could make 16% return, I'd give you 5 of it back.
Yeah, people come up to me all the time and say,
there's all that good information, then I think there could be a report to clubs and say, we like FIMCO, with not being advisors, but anyway, that's enough.
Well, I would make this comment. I'm going to get myself in trouble. If you'd like to see our investment portfolio of how we invested, I'd be very happy to share that with you. Yeah, good question. Yes, sir. I'm going wherever you are, Jim.
I wanted to switch you over to polio and find out how it's going and how we're going to go ahead and overcome some of the problems that are there.
I appreciate that question, too. Jim was very kind to give me the most up-to-date numbers. Year to date, we have got 316 documented cases of polio, and I'm going to break that down. Pakistan has 268, Afghanistan has 23, Nigeria has 6, and other countries have 19. Now, I'm going to make a comment to you. Have we done a great job? Absolutely, positively. I hope that Rotary International receives the Nobel Peace Prize, and I really hope that we get that done. We deserve it. Now, I will also tell you that people say that we're this close. We're not that close. We're this close. We're that close. I will tell you that it is projected right now that Afghanistan and Nigeria will be polio, their last polios will be documented by the end of this fiscal year. Where we are having tremendous issues is Pakistan. We have had, year to date, 64 of our volunteers killed in administering polio vaccination. We are working very hard with their government. You can imagine that government is pretty shattered. There's Taliban that are out there killing our people every time that we try to immunize their children. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't, but it's reality. Our goal in the End Polio Now game is to have Pakistan completely their last case of polio by 2015. If we meet that goal, we've got to wait 3 years to not have any polio cases, and then the world will be declared polio-free thanks to Rotary. So I hope that happens. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Can you share any thoughts about the recruitment of diversity, diverse ethnic, racial, immigrant diversity in the United States to clubs, to make the clubs more diverse?
You know, that is a great question. I will tell you that's one of our several downfalls that we have in diversity in regard to club growth, is that do the clubs represent their particular area? Go to places like Texas, go to places like New Mexico, places like Arizona. Do they have the Hispanic population in their Rotary clubs? And the answer is no. And I think if we're going to be successful and we grow for many, 100 more years from now, we're going to have to be able to be more diversified, and those clubs are going to have to represent their community if we're going to be successful. It cannot consist of, I'm not going to go there. It's got to be more diversified if we're going to be successful. So, good question.
Okay, last question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
What percentage of the contributions to the foundation annually come from the United States?
Oh my goodness. I saw that the other day. I believe that the United States in its annual programs fund, we bring in about $110 million a year. About $54 million comes from the United States. You can imagine that's pretty important. So that's why when we talk about membership declining in the United States, well, that's who's contributed a lot to our Rotary Foundation. So as you have declining membership, what's going to happen to those contributions? Now, are other countries doing better? Yes, Japan is doing very, very well of giving to our Rotary Foundation. The third country out there, quite frankly, is kind of a surprise to me, is India. India is the third largest contributing country that we have in Rotary Foundation. So it's a good question. I'm glad I looked at those numbers last night, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time and for giving us all this information. I wanted to note one other thing about Greg. Grant mentioned this to me. Greg actually started a $1 million dinner program, and I was very impressed to hear that in one evening at one dinner in 2007, they raised $2 million. And Charlie over here is going to talk to you about our Branch Rickey dinner and see if we can get you on our organizing committee for next year. But let's give Greg a round of applause for his presentation. Don't leave yet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. We've got just a couple.